Welcome to Cultural Nepal. In the history of Nepali music and literature, there are a few special singers and composers who have left deep impressions in the minds and hearts of locals through their music. Similarly, in literature of the modern Nepali language, there are a few who have left everlasting works. Aruna Lama and Bhanu Bhakta are the two pointers that we featured in our last episode. In this episode, we will highlight the late singer Narayan Gopal and writer Lakshmi Prasad Devkota. The late Narayan Gopal has been the most celebrated singer of modern Nepali songs since the 70s. He not only sang romantic melodies but also sad songs. Here is a one that portrays the frustrations of Nepali life. कहिले काहीँ हाँस्छु धेरै बेर हाँस्छु कहिले काहीँ हाँस्छु धेरै बेर हाँस्छु जो हाँसी कहिले काहीँ हाँस्छु धेरै बेर हाँस्छु न त कहिले कसैले सोधे न त मैले कसैलाई सुनाए आफ्नो जीवनका पीडाहरूलाई कहिले काहीँ रिसाउँछु आगो भई रिसाउँछु जो अत्याचार गरिरहेछन् केवल उनीहरूसित रिसाउँछु कहिले काहीँ हाँस्छु धेरै बेर हाँस्छु सधैँ अपुरो भइरह्यो सधैँ अधुरो रहिरह्यो आफ्नो जीवनका लक्ष्यहरू सारा कहिले काहीँ पिउँछु तर धेरै पिउँछु जो होश हराउन खोज्छन् केवल उनीहरूसित पिउँछु कहिले काहीँ हाँस्छु धेरै बेर हाँस्छु This is our second episode on music and literature, and today we have a guest from Harvard University, Professor Dr. Michael Witzel.
Yeah.
And you have been in the field of Sanskrit and mythology. You study also mythology.
Yes.
And you have visited Nepal and you have more knowledge in Nepali language and history of language. So could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, gladly. So, yeah, I've been here for the last 30 years, but I've been in Nepal in the 70s.
Right.
Panchayat Raj.
Wow.
So that's from 72
That's
to
a
78.
golden age, I think.
So, so we had a project there. I'm from Germany, so we had a project there of the German Oriental Society.
What society?
Oriental.
Oriental Society.
To film and describe the old handwritten documents. So it was called Hastalikhita Samrakshana or something like that. Therefore I was there for almost 6 years, just looking at Sanskrit and some Newari and Tibetan manuscripts and describing them. So we had a very good time in those years.
Right. So you were born and raised in Germany.
That's right.
And then you went to high school?
High school there and university there. So at the university I studied Sanskrit.
I see. So in Germany you studied Sanskrit, and through your university project you went to Nepal.
Yeah, right.
I see.
So we have been there from 1970 until 2004, and then finally our money ran out. So a very long time.
1970 to 2004.
Yes.
And then this is a project funded by German government?
Yeah, indirectly. You see, it is something like NEH here. And they gave us the money first to film and describe the manuscripts, and then later to catalog them properly.
I see.
So that has run for a very long time.
Right.
And actually we continue in another shape and form now. For the last 2.5 years, there's a project of the Academy in Heidelberg, and they collect, describe, translate documents. So these are mostly Shah-time documents, and you know, with the usual Lal Mohar and so on.
Right, in old days, yes, like a stamped document. So it's a historic document or mythical?
No, this current project, these are all historical documents of any shape and form you cannot imagine, you know.
Right.
Somebody in the countryside writes to the Prime Minister or the Rana Prime Minister that this or that needs to be done and I want my pay. And, and then there's the usual fight between two groups and so on. There are all sorts of documents. Once I picked one up long ago when they restored the palace, Hanumanthoka, for the coronation of King Birendra. There was a big room, you see, like the studio, and it was full of documents like this.
Yes.
I picked one up and I saw that that was actually an order to pay somebody from Panauti 1 mohar for attending the festival. So, so we have lots and lots of documents, and it will give a very good impression of how a Hindu monarchy works.
Okay.
That hasn't been done anywhere, you see.
No, no. So was Nepal government also collaborated in this project, or was it?
We had an agreement with the Department of Archaeology near Singaldarbar, and our society. And that ran for 5 years originally, and then was extended to 3 more times, 5 years, and then it morphed into the cataloging project, still in Nepal, you know.
Okay.
So generations of my colleagues have, so to say, grown up in Nepal.
Yes.
And that is a very good cultural propaganda, I should say. No, because everybody who has been in Nepal, and I'm not flattering you, likes to go back.
In Nepal, yes, I mean, I grew up there. Basically, I was born and raised, and all my family members, you know, I'm like a frog of a pond, so they say, of Kathmandu Valley.
There is such a book, actually.
But I never realized why people who visited Nepal as a tourist or an expat were so fascinated. And I'm like, they would just sit and stand and look at this mountain, and to me it was everyday, like ordinary thing.
No, so there are so many points for a foreigner to like it, you see. First, of course, first of all, the people, you see. they were and they still are very agreeable, nice, you see, friendly. Honest also, you know. I can tell you stories once we start, you know.
I would love to hear your perspective because, you know, as a local native, I see things in a different perspective. And I don't know whether, you know, like
no, it
the
was
same.
like that, you see. Just speaking about honesty, you know, this was 1972. And people were perhaps not so greedy yet for modern things, you know.
No.
So my wife forgot her glasses on arrival in the airport, you know, forgot the glasses in the taxi. Half an hour later, taxi came back, he forgot this.
Yes.
And I went down the Kanti Path or so, and by chance dropped the 500 rupees notes. That was $100 at the time. By chance dropped it from my pocket. An old woman sitting there selling cigarettes. Tobacco paisa.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, she could just have kept quiet, you see, and took $100 like that.
Right.
But she told me.
Right.
And the best story was actually, I read in the newspaper, some Indian person came to buy gold, you see, for his daughter's marriage.
Yes.
And in the taxi, he forgot the paper bag with all the gold.
Oh, wow.
Again, half an hour later, the taxi driver came back, you forgot this here.
Right.
And this man was so shocked.
Yes.
I always say he had his second heart attack on that day. Because, you know, who would resist, you see, when he sees the contents, you know?
Well, the way I grew up in my generation, I don't know how it had changed now, but I definitely was raised to believe in honesty and truth. And, you know, we live to think that we have life after death, and no matter when, you will always be punished for your bad deeds. So the good deed was, I mean, you know, it was a human-oriented society. Human were the focus. And when I think of human rights and humanity, I never understood what it meant until I come here. And so we already have that values in our system, which was the core of our values. But also, I think that I want to talk a little bit about language.
Yes.
Its historic aspects of language and the literature. So you studied Nepali language there.
Yes, I mean, not as much as I should have.
Yes.
No, first Sanskrit, you know.
Right.
And then I came to Nepal without knowing the language, because just after my PhD.
Yes, okay.
So I picked it up in Nepal.
So you first did your Sanskrit studies, and you did PhD, and then from Sanskrit you went to Nepal.
Yes.
And it must be very easy to pick Nepali language if you know Sanskrit. It's based upon Sanskrit, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, you have so many Sanskrit words,
Right.
especially in educated speech,
Right.
or in the news and newspaper and so on.
Yes.
And, you know, to be a bit technical, even the common words one can remember better, because you see, ultimately you see the Sanskrit behind them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Tatu is tapta in Sanskrit. You know?
Yes, you definitely know more than I know.
No, I mean, so once you know the Sanskrit words, you can easily remember the Nepali words.
Right, right. So I only studied 2 years of Sanskrit in high school. But that was just to pass. Yes.
Yeah, it's I mean, of course, it's a difficult language, and most people try to skip it, you know.
Yes.
But it has its own value. See, we had the same discussion in Europe with Latin and Greek, you see.
Right.
And people say, why do you need that? It's useless, learn something else. You know?
Right.
But it gives a certain structure to your mind, actually.
Yes.
So you can process not only languages, but thought also in a different way. So it has inherent value, even if you don't want to use the language later on.
Right. And there's so much brag about, you know, how the scientific concepts are there in a Sanskrit language and all that thing, which is probably beyond our, you know, time of discussion right now.
It would be a long discussion, you know. That,
yes.
And I don't want to be too technical, but Sanskrit, just like Greek, by the way, or Latin, is a very ancient language, and it has a particular structure which the modern languages don't have, whether it is English or Nepali.
Right.
And so in that sense, you know, it is, people like to say scientific, but which language is scientific? No, it is just more archaic and well structured.
Yes.
So you can express things in a short space of time.
Right.
For which we need many words in English, you see.
Okay.
So when you talk to the Pandits or so, when they talk in Sanskrit, you know, they can compress things like this, you see, and the translation will be like that, you know.
I see.
So there are certain benefits to it, you know.
Like mantras.
Yeah, mantras also,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
That,
Like it's like a formulas of
yes.
a language kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Right.
The sacred mantras, of course, have their own history.
Yes.
But maybe your listeners don't want to hear that.
Yes, yes, yeah, I've heard, yeah. So one of the things that I had to face when I came to America is everybody is, when they see me first time, where are you from? Are you from India? And I had a very hard time to explain the difference. You know,
Yeah,
how do I explain where I'm from? So how would you see Nepal, a Nepali language in comparison to India?
No, it is of course different. You know, ultimately, North Indian languages, and Nepali have the same origin, but then they went in their own ways. So just like in India, Gujarati is not like Bengali, you know.
Right.
So Nepali belongs to the northern group, and is quite different. So your next relatives are in Kumaon.
Oh.
And Garhwal.
Kumaon and Garhwal.
Yeah,
that's the Nepal. It used to be Nepal before, as you probably know the history.
Yeah, for a short time. There's still a group in Nepal who want to reconstitute that.
Right. There's still a lot of discussion about that treaty.
Yeah, right.
That we had with British.
With the British.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kumaon is very close actually.
Okay.
And it continues a little bit further west, you see, but Kashmiri then is, of course, quite different.
Sure, sure.
So these are your nearest relatives, you see, not Hindi or Maithili or whatever, you know, it is this northern group. We usually call Parvatiya.
Okay.
In Sanskrit.
Yes, yes, Parvatiya, yeah. Parvatiya.
And so that has become the standard. And we can follow that a little bit, you know, because we have inscriptions from 1100, 1200 from western Nepal, Jumla area. There was a large kingdom extending down into Terai and up to western Tibet also.
Right.
And there you get the first documents on copper plates, you see. These are plates made of copper, and there's some inscription by the king. You know?
It's called Tamrapatra.
Yeah, Tamrapatra.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see what the king gave to Mr. So-and-so for what purpose, or to a temple. And so on. So these are our earliest documents.
Right. So do you know how many languages we have in Nepal, only in Nepal?
I think we have, if I'm not mistaken, we have 61 ethnicities now.
Yes, ethnicity 61, but the native, mother tongues would be 20.
Languages would be similar, but of course, for instance, if you talk about the Rai, they have so many dialects, you see, so there's not even a standard Rai.
Right.
So it differs from valley to valley.
Right.
So if you start counting like that, then it is more like 100.
Yes. Isn't this so rich in diversity and cultural, aspects of living?
No, that is usually what I point out to complete outsiders, you see.
Right.
So within 100 miles from Terai to Mount Everest, you see. You have all the climates of the world, all the plants and animals different, and same for humans.
Right.
You have so many different groups, you see, every other valley has especially in eastern Nepal, every other valley has a different ethnicity or language.
Right. And the tolerance that I experienced when I was growing up, I believe, especially now when I see the world, wasn't that something to be, happy about?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, even as I said, I was there in Panchayati Raj.
Right.
So even then, you see, the king would do Buddhist rituals, you see.
Right.
And there's much more overlap of that between the common people.
Exactly, exactly. So somebody, if asks me what religion you follow, I still don't know how to explain that. Because,
our,
you know...
our joke always was, you ask in Nepali, are you Hindu or Buddhist? Answer is yes.
Thank you.
No,
Exactly.
it is true.
And that concept is so hard for me to explain it to anybody who hasn't been to Nepal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly, because in the West, people pay too much attention to certain sentences, norms of belief, you see.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
And if you don't follow this particular subset of belief, you know, you're outsider or worse. You know?
Right,
Yeah?
right.
While in Nepal, you know, it is mostly based on your rituals. You know?
Right, and your philosophy of life, and there's so much individual choices and the freedom of choosing what to follow and how to follow, and you can make your own kind of, you know, the god kind of get evolved. When I was growing up, there was a god called Santoshi Mata that I never knew, and it was like, you know, like spreading.
It's a fairly new deity. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but people cannot believe, you know, that inside the same family you have different kinds of religions.
Right, right.
Yeah? Worshipping Shiva or Kali or Vishnu or Buddhist, you see.
Yes.
So it is typical, but here people cannot understand that.
So you are actually Boston Brahmin.
Yeah, in that sense, yeah.
Yes.
We say, Sharmanya Deshiyo Brahmanosmi. I'm a German Brahmin.
Yes, when I was coming to Boston, my god brother from England said, don't worry, there will be Brahmins in Boston. There's Boston Brahmin everywhere. I was like, okay. My parents will be a little bit relieved with that.
Well,
but,
in the center of Boston you can find them.
Right.
And they keep to their traditions, you see.
Right.
Once I talked to an old woman who said, the grandmother of my grandmothers talked to George Washington.
Yeah, the Thoreau. I actually go to Walden Pond with Thoreau, and I really feel very spiritual there. He did follow the, you know, the Hindu scripts for his philosophy of life.
That is actually why I'm here, because my chair for Sanskrit has been donated by one of his friends, a medical doctor, Wales.
Oh, okay.
And he died in '48, so his testimony, his will says that we should have a chair for teaching Sanskrit.
Yes.
So it goes back to that time.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so we have been teaching since the 60s, 70s, 1860s. You know?
Right. Thoreau and the Walden Pond and the people I meet here, I feel very spiritual, and I try to convey them, no, spirituality in there, in America, if you want to find it, it's everywhere.
They had a group, you see, they met regularly, and so there was a lot of interest in the 19th century.
Yes, yes.
Stretching a little bit into the 20s, after First World War.
Right.
And then it petered out a little bit, but then in the 60s especially, you know, first with the Beatles.
Yes, the Beatles,
Hinduism came back, and after the Chinese occupation of Tibet, many lamas came, you know. So Buddhism is going very strong now. Yeah. So we also have a chair for Tibetan and Himalayan studies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
so he's my friend, and he also stayed in Nepal for 5 years.
Oh, what's his name again?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a Dutch name.
Dutch name.
Van der Kuip.
Okay.
Kuijp.
Okay. Okay.
He did Tibetan studies in Nepal, you know, in Bauda.
Right. Did you work in Summit Hotel?
No, not like that. You know, we lived, of course, privately.
Okay, because there was somebody with a similar name in Summit Trekking, and he was very, very much into Buddhism.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so I was...
Nowadays, you have so many people.
Nowadays, it's very...
grown around Bauda, you see.
Yes, there's so much. Kathmandu has grown so much that I feel lost. I
felt lost as well. When I first came after a long time, I couldn't find my house. I passed by several times. You know. There was a we lived in Kimdol, just next to Swayambhu.
Oh,
very nice. The rice fields around us. There was a narrow path like that, and now it's a road. So I went by several times, couldn't find the house anymore.
Yes, yes.
And later we lived in Gaididhara.
Okay, Gaididhara. That's where I grew up.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The Dixit family's compound.
Okay, yes, yes.
So near the peepal tree there.
Right.
And so there also I couldn't find it until I saw the name. Yeah.
Wow.
So it has changed so much. Yeah.
It has changed so much. But when talk about Nepali language and literature and the caste system, I don't know if you ever got a chance to read about Devkota, Lakshmi Prasad Devkota. You know, I grew up with this famous values that he has written about a man is as great as he has his heart, not the caste that he was born into. So can you tell us a lot more about, you know, I mean, sometimes people kind of don't understand that caste system is not quite as slavery or, you know, that discrimination in the West. It's more of a values of how you live your life.
Of course, it is still around, you know, although Constitution says no. The same in India. But in Nepal it was a little more relaxed than in India, you see. So even if you're married outside your group, you know, after 3 generations you are taken in back, you know. Of course, that kind of thing still exists. You see, for instance, a friend of mine, Newar friend of mine, they are both Nevas but different castes, you know. So they married. One is a scholar, the other one was the director of the Godavari Botanical Garden. And but they couldn't do it officially, so they went to town hall and did it there, and then had a reception. So certain rules are there, you see, but it was not so negative as you read in India every day, you know, in the newspaper.
Right, right.
I mean, if you live in a traditional town like Bhaktapur, some of my friends, they're architects and scholars, so they made a plan of Bhaktapur with a palace on top of the hill, and the Brahmins living around that, and then it goes down the hill. First the Shreshtas, you know, the Nevas, and then down the hill, and then you don't get two-story houses anymore, only one-story house with thatched. And the outcast, poorly, they live on the other side of the river. So they do certain jobs only, you see. So it was arranged as, well, the Indians like to say division of labor, but of course it is not voluntarily. You get born into it.
Right. It's kind of, yes, but there is definitely not the same exact, you know, lifestyle or the values they grew up with. But what I'm trying to point it is that with the literature and language, we can have that understanding of equality. And one of the writers and literate figure that I admire a lot, and I read, you know, influenced by his writing, is Lakshmi Prasad Devkota. But you probably didn't get a chance to read his.
I met Mr. Sama once. Yeah, he was in one big function, so we met and talked to him. And
met who?
Sama.
Oh, Balkrishna Sama.
Yeah,
yes. I remember him.
His nickname.
Yes. So Sama means equality.
Yeah, that is what he
Isn't
said.
that wonderful?
I chose it intentionally, you know.
Yes, because he was a Rana family.
Yeah, he was from Rana family.
Yes, I remember him. I actually was very small, little, and he would walk around in Kamal Pokhari, and he has this impressive figure also, you know, very, you know, radiant.
I immediately pointed out that I'm Jambadu Rama family, but I call myself Sama, equal.
Yes.
So that was his poet's name.
Right. So there are people who are working through the social justice, through language and literature, and having somebody like you from different country and culture get interested in a language is very inspiring for us. And yeah, it's very nice to, you know, we're very fortunate to have somebody.
And there's so much to learn, you see. I always said, well, Well, you know, I was on a 1-year agreement in Nepal always.
Just 1 year agreement?
Each year I signed up again, 1 more year, 1 more year.
Wow.
So only when my son grew up, you see, I said, okay, let us go to Europe, you know, for schooling, etc. No?
Right.
But I always said I should have stayed until 2014.
Oh.
Then our project came to an end, you know.
Yes.
Because there's so much to learn, you see.
So, and then you also were involved in having a some German institution in Nepal?
Yeah, right. We had a so-called Nepal Research Center. That also came to a halt in 2014, but we are working at reconstituting it now.
Okay.
Because it's always a question of money. No?
Right, and also I remember that one time a lot of Nepali people were interested and learned German. And also because we did not have this culture of immigrating to other country, I believe that at one point Nepali were very welcomed in German and they didn't even need a visa. Like they could have visa in the airport, I believe.
I don't know the rules by heart, you know, it is always reciprocal, you see. So if a certain country gives you 2 months visa, you see, then Nepal would also give you 2 months, like that, you see.
Okay.
So it depends, and things have become more difficult in the 80s, I think.
Right.
Before that, it was much easier.
Yeah, because it was closed country up until 54 or something like that, right?
That's right.
So you were one of the very early visitor.
Not quite the earliest, you see, 1951, but still early, you know. That was the interesting thing for us, you know. We still lived in a very traditional society, especially Bhaktapur. Kathmandu was more modern, of course.
Yes.
And there you could really understand how Hindu-Buddhist society works, you see.
Yes.
So we always used to joke that Nepal is a museum of medieval India.
Yes. It is actually, it is like a museum when you think about it, and it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's well preserved, you see.
It's preserved. It's beautiful too. I mean, architecturally.
That, of course.
It is nothing like anywhere in the world that you can find.
This kind of landscape, cityscape you don't get, you see.
Right.
As I said, my old friend Sekla, who worked there in the 60s already, also for UNESCO, his most beloved place is the Patan Darbar Square.
Yes.
Because of a unique arrangement of palaces and temples, you see.
Yes.
And this kind of thing you don't see elsewhere.
No. And have you been to Gorkha?
No, I went once, you see.
Okay.
And climbed all these 1,000 steps.
Wow.
Then I nearly passed out. I was too quick, you know. There are so many steps.
You forgot that it's air pressure. Wow.
So just to see and to take a look of the surroundings from the palace, you know. And I used to joke, you see, Prithvi Narayan, when you looked around, he said, okay, let's go to Kathmandu. And that is what he did, you know.
Yes, yes. So unification of Nepal goes, you know, the big credit goes to him. Yes. And then the unification through Nepali language.
Yes, that's also.
That has created some kind of safety and movement. But now, I think, how do you feel about the changes now in Nepal?
You mean political? Or?
Political, social change, a lot of social, I mean.
Yeah, social change you can never avoid, you know. It happens to you one way or the other, you see. And a big factor was the TV.
Yes.
In my time there was only radio for a few hours. But you know, in villages certain things may happen, you know, when you're drunk or so. No?
Right.
But normally very little happened, and I saw also very little jagara, how do you say in English?
The quarrel.
Quarrel, fighting.
Fighting.
Very little I saw, actually. Once on the street I saw, because they accused some man in some sort of marital, I forget what it was. Right. So you saw very little of that. And normally people don't resolve their differences in actual fights. You know?
Right, right.
And so in that sense I'm happy that people are still the same.
They are still the same. Yeah, I don't think their intention is to fight. Their intention is to get along and move on with life and enjoy life as it comes. Nothing really too complicated and not invasion is not a concept, you know.
No, as I said, social change you cannot really avoid, you know, it comes automatically through contact. You see, in the 70s I said Indianization is progressing with Hindi films and so on. You know?
The Bollywood movies, yes, that brainwashed.
Was the only type of entertainment in those years.
Yes.
And then the first videos came in the early 80s, you see. And then TV, that changed a lot, you see.
Yes.
And it's always the same everywhere. Once you have TV, then society changes automatically because you see all these foreign Hollywood movies and whatever.
Yeah, pop cultures. Yeah,
so that you cannot avoid, and people strive to. I'm sorry, a little bit cold.
That's okay.
They strive to emulate that.
Right.
That you cannot stop, you see, but politics is another matter. You know?
But also another concept that I keep, you know, getting into, and of course my background is not a sociology, history or anything like that, language, is a concept of woman's right. And I never felt that I was treated badly. I felt free, I felt I had enough right as long as I do my responsibility. And you know, I grew up listening the legend of Brikuti and Sita, you know, Sita, and they're very respectful, you know, respectful. So in Nepal, in your perspective, how is it like a legend of Brikuti and Sita? Is it historic? Is it legendary? How do you see as your expert on the field?
Yeah, right. Of course, I don't have the women's experience, but yeah, Brikuti seems to be a real historical figure, you see.
Okay.
Marrying king of Tibet.
Right.
That, you know, Tibet was very powerful in those years, you know, 600, 700.
Yes.
And so the king married actually Chinese princess and the Nepalese princess.
Right. Two women.
Two of them.
Yes.
And they have been deified. Yeah? So nowadays you have the green Tara and the white Tara.
Yes. So the green is a Nepali one.
Yeah. Well, green is always a difficult concept. Then we get into philosophy of language. You know?
Okay.
Because green is not our green.
Oh, okay.
No, it is Hario. No? It is this whole range of colors, you know, from almost yellow to light green or some green.
Yes. Yes.
So people don't understand that.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So yeah.
So she is the one who introduced Buddhism in Tibet, doesn't she?
Yeah, was a major figure in doing so.
Right.
Tibetans have their own, let us say, apostle of Buddhism, you know.
What
Sambhota, their own.
But was that before Brikuti
time.
went, or at the same time? Oh, I see.
But she really helped to get it spread. You know?
Okay, I see.
So she seems to be a historical figure. No? I mean, we never have definite records of those years. You know?
Right.
And the Nepalese records usually limit themselves basically to the Kathmandu Valley and surroundings.
Right.
Yeah, there we have a lot.
Right. That is old. The valley was Nepal in old days, right? Otherwise, other kingdoms has different names.
That was another joke we had. You see, if somebody comes from the next valley and says, "I'm going to Nepal," I thought you were in Nepal, but it really meant Kathmandu Valley at first. You know, Nepal Mandala.
Right.
So, but that is just a name, you know. And so we have a lot of documents about that.
Right. So what about Sita? Is it historic figure or legendary figure?
If I'm honest, I must disappoint you.
Oh, no, that's okay.
No, because
I just want your perspective.
Ramayana, you know, we have a Nepali Ramayana since 1800. No?
Right. Who wrote that?
One Acharya, I forget the first name now.
Bhanubhakta Acharya.
Bhanubhakta, yeah.
Okay,
correct,
that's the first Nepali Ramayana.
Yeah, right,
okay,
Bhanubhakta.
that's how you unified the language.
I knew his great-grandson.
Sorry?
I knew his great-grandson.
You did?
He even taught Nepali here in the 80s.
What's his name?
Jayaraj.
Oh, so he is, I know him.
Yeah.
But I did not know he is a great-grandson of Bhanubhakta Acharya. Okay.
No, he was the UN ambassador.
I see, yes.
And then he resigned that post. When the first communist government came in. And then he was a fellow at Harvard for a
Okay.
year. And then I asked him to teach Nepali, which he did very nicely.
Oh,
His
okay.
PhD is actually a very nice grammar of Nepali.
Oh, okay.
So you see how close we always are. We know each other very well.
Yes.
I can tell you many funny stories like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so the Ramayana by poet Valmiki is in Sanskrit, you know, and it is regarded as a historical fact by people, but it is actually an epic.
Okay.
Like other epics everywhere else in the world, you know, there's some historical kernel, nucleus, and then many stories get built around that.
Right.
And for those who are interested, you know, one colleague of mine has actually investigated the Ramayana, and it has the structure of a Russian folktale. And that has been very well studied, okay, by Mr. Prop in Russia. 31 items, and the Ramayana is 29 of them.
Okay.
So now you understand why it's so popular.
Okay.
It speaks directly to people.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the righteous Rama, righteous Sita, and often the evil guy Ravana.
Right.
He's not evil everywhere.
No, not
In
Raman
South
is
India-
supposed to be Brahman's son.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
so
this
he's
kind of
right in his own, I think, path. And he was a good king.
Yeah, right. So, so this kind of tale is. You remember in India when they had this film, no?
Ramayana film.
The
Yes.
streets were empty every Sunday. No?
Yes.
So it really speaks to people, and so in
Yes.
Nepal we have a Nepali version now.
Right. So there is a Janakpur, this temple
Yeah,
of
Sita.
Sita, where she was, you know, like queen. I mean, princess. So that was like, what is that then? Like.
Yeah, you know that area, Mithila, Janakpur area, on both sides of the border, is actually ancient kingdom, yeah, of and Videha it was called, and that is even in the Vedic literature, which is my special field, you know.
Your Vedic literature.
And so in the Vedic text, that area is mentioned with their king. There was one very knowledgeable, let us say, king who always discussed
Right.
philosophy with Yajnavalkya. Yagyavalkya.
Yes.
And so that is his area actually.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, I
Janakpur
see.
area.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there is again a historical nucleus to that. Whatever happened in the epic is another story. No?
Right, right. So the point I was trying to make is I grew up having this very strong, intelligent, powerful woman, and I never felt that women were treated lesser. Whereas,
No, it's a good experience for you. in the Vedic period, they were almost equal. You see.
Right.
Yeah? And
Right.
in the Middle Ages, it deteriorated.
So it's basically there is a philosophy of equality or respect to a woman in Hindu
Sure,
religion, but then between at that time and then now there was some deterioration, and where did it come from?
It's
How did
difficult to tell. I mean, in India they often say because of Muslims, but that is an invention. It is not. It is just the development of caste society as such, you know. Became more stricter, became stricter over time. But of course other people tried to reform it. There were also reformers.
Yeah, I think it's such a controversial and paradoxical concept in Hindu religion that's probably why you have to be born in Hindu religious family to really understand the Hindu concept and respect it, right?
No, sure.
So even a temple, when I go into, I never saw all this sculpture that is vulgar or I never even noticed it. And then I got exposed about interpretation of that, and I was like shocked. And it's like, no, when we go to temple, I don't see that. I see, like a more spirituality, the energy,
no, sure.
and the power.
Mean, if you know the background, of course, you come from a very educated family. Let us say a farmer will not understand all these things. Still worships the deities.
Right.
And I can tell you a nice story. My son grew up in Nepal, so after 2 years, we went back to see my parents. So my mother took him into an old church, in the center of town. It's a 1,000-year-old church. And he looked around, saw all these saints on the wall, and he told her, "Oh, so many gods here."
How old was he?
2 years.
Oh, so sweet.
She was slightly shocked.
And then this was a Catholic church?
Yeah, very
wow.
old. It's from Charlemagne's time, so from 800 something.
Wow.
So very traditional,
Yes.
And of course, the worship of, let us not go there.
Yes.
Worship of saints is somewhat similar,
Right.
And of course, they are not deities, not officially deities, although the people often regard them as such.
Like conceptually, it's a similar kind of feelings.
Yeah, and the worship is similar. But that you cannot see unless you have stayed in South Asia.
Right, right.
So when I come back to the West, then I into such a place of pilgrimage, etc.
Right.
I say, I know that. I've seen that.
Yeah. It's so fascinating that that you have studied. So another thing is, what did it bring to you to study this kind of thing? Like how did it enrich German community, or you yourself in a personal?
It's a good question, you see, because I definitely changed there. Yeah. I'm not a Buddhist, I'm not a Hindu, you see. Right. I'm not a Catholic, but I'm all of the above by now.
Right.
But it really changes your outlook to life, Yeah. So what should I say? I mean, for instance, to confess, I'm not afraid of death, you see.
Right.
Yeah? That is one thing you experience there. You see, you learn there.
Of the Hindu concept.
Yeah, not like here, you see, where everybody say, "Oh, the big sea," and so forth,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that I lost completely.
Right.
Yeah.
So you become kind of enlightened in a way.
In that sense, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's really deep. Yeah.
And we teach some of that, of course, to our students, if we can, in whatever country we teach.
Right.
To appreciate Nepali culture. I should say, we don't have so much time now. We actually have been teaching Nepali since 1990 or so.
Okay.
And we have now a 3-year Nepal studies program.
For whom? For anybody? Or for?
Yeah, for the university. Okay. You can always participate, of course. Okay. It's public. So where somebody has given us money to have 2 conferences per year in Nepal and here, studying various aspects of Nepalese culture, and we want to expand on that, of course.
Okay.
So.
And also you teach Sanskrit in summertime only, or
yes,
year round?
Yeah, year round, and especially so in the summer.
Okay.
So that is a sort of crash course, 7-8 weeks. But 2 of our best PhDs came from such a summer school course.
I have heard about I try to, I don't know how I come across your name, but I kind of try to search to see, your background. And there was few comment about how good you are in Sanskrit teaching.
Nice to
and
hear.
I was very, very impressed. Yeah, they had such a great thing to talk about your knowledge.
Since I was in Nepal for almost 6 years, you can teach in a different way. It's not a book learning alone. You always have examples ready, you see, of what you have seen, experienced, and so on.
Right, and then when you teach Nepali, where do you get the course book? What book do you follow?
No, there are several, it depends a little bit on our students, but there are several books. I mean, the British started that, of course, because of the Gorkha connection.
Talking about British, I always was very curious about why not Nepali? Why do we call Nepalese? And I kind of, to be honest with you, it kind of makes me a little bit not very happy about, I want to be called Nepali.
Yeah, Right, but that is tradition, like in all languages, you see. So, so we have Senegalese, we have I don't know what. It is a standard ending, you know, in
English
ease, you
kind
know,
of thing.
and it changes. We always use Nepali, but for the common people, sometimes we have to say Nepalese, you know. It depends.
So my wish is someday maybe we can include Nepali for Nepali language and Nepali for Nepali people also in a dictionary. Maybe we can.
In our university catalog, it's always Nepali.
Okay.
Yeah, it is normal, you know.
That's great. Yeah.
So,
yeah. But that's just the ordinary kind of person's concept. But there must be some linguistic theories behind all that.
Yeah, it is language. You know, you cannot predict these things. They settle at a certain time and then they get imitated.
Right.
I mean, Congolese, whatever. And sometimes we don't use them when there's for the Near East. You often use the E, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But
like Qatari or something like that.
Yes.
But that is a special thing for Near East.
Right. So how many languages do you speak? German?
I don't know. To speak is one thing, to understand is another.
Okay.
In Europe we learn many, you know.
Okay.
Greek, Latin in school and French and English and so on. And then when you travel you pick up others, you know.
Right.
So I knew this Serbo-Croatian, Italian from just being there, Spanish. But then, of course, in South Asia, I started a little bit Hindi in the university, and then I've mostly forgotten and make the wrong grammar, you know.
Yeah.
like do bat, wrong grammar. So, because I'm influenced by Nepali. No?
Right.
And but then when you need, you know, for instance, Oriya, I had to go once. And it is easy. 50% I could understand.
Oriya.
Because of Nepali.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's unlike Hindi. So with Nepalese background, you can understand 50%.
Oh, wow.
And I always pretended not to understand.
My God.
Yeah, it's really like that.
Yes.
Also Marathi, I had to read one book in Marathi once.
Wow.
And I never took up the grammar dictionary, I just started. And then, okay, this is this is that. And you could actually read it.
Right, right.
So
we probably have to come back and do more of the more deeper conversation on the cultural and Nepali history and languages. But maybe we can just wrap up with your sweet and funny memories and and also actually I also wanted to again ask you one more time.
Yes.
So you are the one who started Nepali language in Harvard University.
Yes,
and when did you start it? How long it has been?
1990, I think. Yeah.
1990. And you're a pointer of this. And thank you so much for doing that. And I am so pleased to have, I mean, it's never in my dream, you know. I read a book called Daughter of East with Benazir Bhutto's. And I saw a picture of Harvard, but I never imagined or dreamed that I'll be sitting here today like here and talking about Nepali language.
You're too kind.
Oh no, it's very. Thank you so much for doing that. But but I think we can end with your sweet memories and funny memories of your experience in Nepal and.
Yeah, we have a very good memory, you know? And all my colleagues always came back. You know? Yeah, so they have their own projects, and I mean, some have been there since the late 60s. And still go back.
Right.
Like one of my friends has a house in Bhaktapur.
Oh, really?
And he lives there part of the time.
Oh, wow.
I always wanted to have a house in the Ichangu Valley.
Oh, okay.
It was such a nice valley.
Yes.
Now they built a road, unfortunately.
Right.
I have very good memories of one spring walk we took there.
Yes. So if you remember one thing, what is the food you like in Nepal?
The usual dal bhat, I like it. We had various types of, when you go to a marriage celebration, Newa marriage celebration, then you get very different kind of food.
Right, right.
So it depends,
Yes.
And so according to your choice,
Right.
So recently we went to Dwarika Hotel. They have a special.
Oh, that's the best place. I love that place. Yeah. Right.
We did actually on Dasein Day, right? On that day we went there.
Right.
So as you can see, many good memories, some funny.
Right.
We can talk next time.
Sure, yes. It's amazing that you're going from Germany to Nepal and then USA.
Yeah.
What a dynamic.
With a little bit Holland and Japan in them.
Okay, also Holland and Japan. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's quite an interesting. I think it has been such a wonderful. I think there's so much to talk about, and but for today, I think we just have to say thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity.
For your time. They're very, very nice, and we'd love to have you again.
Sure.
And you know, if somebody wants to study more on Sanskrit,
you can connect them.
Connect them with
okay.
Yeah. So,
very good.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for watching.
Sure.
Okay.